Hello and welcome to Dharma, the Planet Waves 2020 spring reading. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, and this is the first of what I guess will be 13 videos that are dedicated to the astrology of the spring of 2020. I'm going to take actually out quite a bit further into 2021, at least in theme, because the year culminates with a big pointer to the future. First, a couple of technical notes. I've chosen to do this in video. I know that the promotional material has said video. Video is not my strong suit, and I want to do the best work that I can for you. But after lots of thought and contemplation, here I am, and you can see me, and I can't see you. Let's see. Audio. Occasionally there are complaints about the sound quality. As you can see, I'm using a broadcast microphone, and I'm speaking right into it. And so I want the sound to be clear. I think the sound is more important than the visuals, though there is some sound degradation in the conversion process when we compress the video and put it on YouTube. And I will see about making audio files and also about possibly having video downloads. That is fine with me. What I'm doing with this reading, as with all 12 sign readings, is basically using the same astrology, only turning the chart a different way for each of the signs, which changes the emphasis in terms of what gets expressed by the chart and then in turn by me. So, for example, in this discussion today, I'm going to talk about a generic chart about the next 8 or 9 months. And then for a few days, I've been making up these charts, which are specific to the sign, which will be included in each of the signs. And so it's really amazing how much changes when you turn the chart 1/12 of the way, even just that small amount. And so in the process of taking the same basic astrology that is influencing all of us and some of us in rather strikingly similar ways, I can refine that down to some fairly focused themes that present for each of the different signs. So that's something of the trick to this. But then, of course, this is all in the interpretation, and as my Aunt Josie would say, the gift of gab, which she assured me that I have. So otherwise, I would be much more nervous about sitting here for the next 12 hours over the next few days, and having to say so much and make so much sense. I'm probably not going to do any costume changes. I'm just going to wear what I'm wearing that day, and so this is all in an effort to save work. As you know, I don't edit videos. What I do is what you get, very similar to Planet Waves FM. Maybe on Planet Waves FM, I make one edit a month of all the programs. So that's like one edit every 12 hours. So if I have a pollen-induced sneezing fit, I will ask Kate to edit. And a young woman in Ukraine by the name of Katarina Ryzenko edits the video. Hi, Kate, and thank you. She's very much behind the scenes, but when you see video, Kate did the video. All right, so just as an opening thought, the times that we are in are rich times. There's a rich moment. I know not everyone's feeling rich because hardly any businesses that are open or functioning, and 25 million people are unemployed. And I'm being a little bit sardonic when I say rich, but I do mean that when there is a lot of chaos, there is also potential. The potential is unleashed by the chaos. The chaos provides an opportunity to notice things and to tap into available resources, and then additionally to take advantage of the fact that the world is a little bit more loose than it normally is, and people are shaken out of their typically very tight routines. One of the most disturbing things about almost all the time that I remember leading into the Mercury retrograde in Pisces of 2020, which is when at least in Europe and the United States, all the shit hit the fan, is that people have been tending to be very, very tight. Their schedules are tight. Their attitudes are tight. They do a lot of being set in their ways, and almost having being set in their ways as a life goal of some kind, as if it's reassuring in some way. I know I've mentioned this a couple of times. I want to focus the theme of this disruption happening early in the Aquarian age, and why this disruption is so important, and then we'll get into how to make the most of it. And then I'll explain when I'm done with this why I've called this reading the Dharma. So there is a controversy in astrology over when the age of Aquarius actually begins. The 60s like to think of themselves as the dawning of the age of Aquarius, thanks to a song by the Fifth Dimension and a fantastic bass line, and some lines of astrology in the song that have absolutely no pertinence to anything vaguely resembling an astrological age. For example, when the moon is in the 7th house, which it is for 2 hours every day, and Jupiter aligns with Mars, and that happens, depending on how you count, 4 times a year. There's a conjunction every 2 years. There's a square every year. There's an opposition every 2 years, and so forth. So the popular ideas about the age of Aquarius have nothing to do with the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius involves the precession of the equinoxes, which is about the world wobbling on its axis. So the world spins. Imagine there's a globe around this pen. The world spins, but there's a wobble, and the wobble takes about 25,000 years. They don't really even know how long it takes because they don't have a good measurement of it. But it's about 25,000 years. And as the world wobbles, the backdrop of the stars moves behind the seasons, so that on the winter solstice in the year 1, there'll be a certain star lined up with where the sun is on the winter solstice, and then in the winter solstice in the year 12,500, the exact opposite star is going to be aligned with the winter solstice, and in between there are these things called ages, which are the duration that the vernal equinox point, which shows up in the chart as the first degree of Aries. It's got a few different names. Forget the Chirons there for now. We'll get back to that. The sidereal vernal point, or the Aries point, or the first degree of Aries, all the same thing, appears to move. You can't really see it, but the sun is there on the first day of spring. And for the past 2,000 years, this thing has been aligned with the constellation Pisces. Now, all this early talk about the age of, maybe early talk about the age of Aquarius dawning was on one level premature, because that sidereal vernal point does not reach the constellation Aquarius for another 300 years, and that doesn't. Then there's an overlap with Pisces and Aquarius, and then so forth. And so we can't really use the precession of the equinoxes and the alignment of the constellations as the exact reference, because it's way too far in the future, and you will hear people argue that we can't possibly be in the age of Aquarius because the Aries point's nowhere near the constellation Aquarius. Okay, so then there's the more intuitive way to discern what is going on, and that is to look at some of the principles of the sign Aquarius, which do not include peace and love. I mean, I hate to break it to everyone, but Aquarius is not a sign inherently about peace and love. That's more about the age of Pisces. It's the groovy tie-dye thing, and let's smoke pot and put on Pink Floyd and have sex kind of thing, or play electric guitar and well long into the night until the sun comes up. The age of Aquarius, the sign energy from a collective standpoint, is more about fixed patterns. Aquarius is a fixed sign, and so we're looking at fixed patterns, and people who are born with strong Aquarius need to understand that they have fixed patterns they're working with. I happen to have the moon in Aquarius and Saturn in Aquarius, and a whole bunch of other things strung in between them in Aquarius, so I'm familiar with this energy, and you have to work with the pattern-forming tendency to be able to use that pattern-forming tendency to form a pattern that you need, and then to also see it in operation and be able to eliminate a pattern that you don't want. So this requires observation. And when we observe the world, we notice that the pattern formation thing has been going strong since the age of electricity, which is an Aquarius thing. Those lines are transmission lines. They might be water waves, but they're also transmission lines. And so when we start to look at inventors like Tesla and Edison, basically electrifying the planet, that's very Aquarian. This is happening in the 20th century. And once the electricity takes over, this pattern is relentless. And it is essentially everything is electrified. You wonder why the fuck you need an electric toothbrush and everything, electric spoon. I mean, I'm surprised they don't have electric spaghetti twirling spoons and electric chopsticks. I mean, maybe they have them someplace, but since electricity took over, everything has to be an electrified gadget. And then this gave way to the internet, and since the internet has taken over, everything has to be a gadget with an IP address, with an internet protocol address, and that's how you know you're in the age of Aquarius. That one day the internet was something that we all went to and bought a cup of coffee so we could get a card in the cafe. Remember those days? It was quaint. Or paid $1.50 to get the card, and we could be on the internet for 10 minutes and do everything we had to do. Or and then it was in everyone's home, and then all of a sudden every last damn thing is connected to the internet. Everything you do, every date you have, you make the arrangements by the internet. This thing, I use this for very little. I mainly use it as a camera. Most people use this for everything. I don't comprehend how people can put their banking on the thing. I mean, there are things that seem convenient, and there are things that seem stupid. I would not want to walk around with whatever small fortune I've acquired, all connected through this thing that I might lose and that can be hacked. But that's the pattern, more and more and more. Now you order your pizza on the internet, and you make the appointment to get your kitty cat groomed on the internet, and it's ridiculous. But that's the foundation of patterns associated with Aquarius, and it involves electricity. And now, if you follow the COVID news, you can see that they're talking about everyone contact tracing on the internet, and you carrying around your ball and chain is going to tell you if you've been exposed to someone who their ball and chain has been exposed to someone who says their ball and chain has been exposed. And then I read this morning that China's installing cameras outside people's front door and also in people's homes to track their movement. And then we have I forget the exact name of the chip. It's an old invention, and it can contain a lot of data, and can key into the big database, and then there's the microchip that's the stamp, the like ultraviolet stamp, which is going to be some kind of proof of immunity. All of this is going to be digitally connected, and the interruption has caused a moment of pause around all of this. Now, we need to use this moment of pause to reflect if we want to personally be part of the internet protocol. If you want to be a human with blood, sweat, and tears in a body, or if you want to basically be a device, as far as the wider world is concerned. And the tragic thing about technologies, and particularly electrical technologies, is that the impact of the technology is never assessed. There's never a discussion about the impact, and so they're rapidly cranking up the 5G system. There's been absolutely no assessment of what this system does, and if you question it, you're allegedly a crackpot. But they meaning the purveyors, the Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all those people and Samsungs of the world, never question the impact of their invention. They're only interested in marketing and making the thing profitable. So that whole mentality of we're going to get everybody in is really all about we're going to sell everybody one, so that we not only make our investment back, but we all become they all become multi-billionaires. So in this moment of interruption, we are seeing a lot of plans being rolled out, and we're getting to go slowly enough to watch these plans get rolled out, and we're seeing, for example, the onslaught of 5G, and we're seeing the way the conversation's being treated. Typically in wartime, as Andrew McLuhan points out, there is this push for so-called innovation. Everything at the moment has been put into shock right now and sidetracked. I reckon anyone who is involved in engineering the shock on any level is probably a little bit less in shock, but who knows what exactly they're going through because of the unexpected ways that this has turned out. My take is, and the reason I'm investing a fair amount of time in this video explaining this, is that we needed this interruption at the beginning of the age of Aquarius to stop the show for long enough to see what is going on. And so I would encourage you to set aside your preconceptions, to set aside your prejudices about what you think is a viable idea or not, or what you think is conspiratorial or not, and look at what's actually being done and what is actually being said, and ask yourself if you want this for yourself and your children and anybody involved in your future? Do you really want this? This is the crucial moment that we are in here at the dawn of the age of Aquarius. Additionally, the other thing that has happened is there's been a massive disruption in the consumption of fossil fuels. I don't think they're ever going to come back to the level that they were being consumed. I think that now it's going to become much more obvious that we need to go to alternatives, and we have experienced the single event that could possibly save us from global warming. And part of why I can do that is simply the reduction in consumption, but additionally, more significantly, is the gaining of the missing experience that we can actually make a change. That we are not these automatons and these robots that cannot ever change. And we can change the way we live. We can shift our life patterns, and we can do so radically. And what we need to do is to come up to speed consciously and slowly, and not quite come all the way up to speed. I think we need to go a lot slower than we were going. And no, not everyone is going to do that. There are people who definitely want to jump back right on the hamster wheel. But I would encourage you to use this opportunity and remember what you have learned and what you have observed. All right, so a couple of bits. Let's do some astrology. I want to summarize the astrology that I'm going to be using in this. I left this little dark space at the bottom of the screen. We'll probably put the logo down there. All right, so here's a chart set with Aries as the sign rising. Gotta get used to this again. Aries as the sign rising. So this is just for chart for everyone. I've got a separate chart for Aries. The shit show quality of this year involved the alignment of Saturn and Pluto. We can leave out Jupiter for a second. Saturn and Pluto on January 12th. This is a conjunction that last happened in the early 1980s. I was reminded today by our Textiles Bureau Chief Cheryl Corson, who reread the chapters in chapter on Saturn-Pluto alignments in Cosmos and Psyche by Rick Tarnas. That this kind of alignment is often associated with pandemics. The AIDS pandemic in the early 1980s was the most recent large one, and that was one Saturn-Pluto cycle ago. There's also a tendency for there to be all kinds of reactionary politics at this time. There is a contraction. There is a fear factor during these kind of alignments. That's a very serious problem because people are easily manipulated when they are under the influence of fear. Finally, there is a kind of a steely resolve that certain people feel when under the influence of this aspect, and become more courageous and more persistent and more steadfast. And there can be some true acts of often unnoticed heroism in these times, because there are people who just get what's going on and they feel called into action. So these are some things going on as a result of this, and we're going to be living with the effects of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction for a long time. The last major event in this cycle, by the way, was not the conjunction of the early 80s, but the opposition of 2001 and 2002, and we know how hard people tried to reshape the world, and we lived in this thing called the post 9/11 world for years, and Bush would get up at the podium and pretend this is a bloody shirt and wave the bloody shirt of 9/11 and say, "Remember all the people who sacrificed." And so they're all big on. Excuse me. I'm a scientist, so I drink out of a beaker. What was that? Reminding us of how many people have died and how much suffering there is. And so there's a death threat element connected with Saturn Pluto events that can be used. Now, at the moment, we're in the middle of a Saturn has moved into Aquarius, and now we're in the middle of the conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto, a 3-part conjunction. There'll be one. There was one, I think, in March. There'll be one in June. There'll be one in November. That's also magnifying the death trip on one hand, and then on another hand, it's an opportunity to take this whole scenario on a much more spiritual level. So this is very distinctive astrology to have both Saturn and Jupiter form a conjunction to Pluto in the same year. And we're seeing the effects of that are wide-scale effects, and that are affecting essentially everyone in almost every part of the globe. And then a bunch of megalomaniacs are telling us that we're not going to be able to come out of the house until we're tattooed with proof that we had an ejection that they can't prove works in the first place. And plus, the novel coronavirus version, whatever this one is, too, then might have 20 more things that follow it, and then what? We're just going to have to get an injection every time there's a new virus, and where are all these viruses coming from anyway? All right. So what happens later in the year, and that all of this is leading to, is the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the first degree of Aquarius. That happens on 12/21/20. The Sun will be here in the first degree of Capricorn, and then Jupiter and Saturn will be in the first degree of Aquarius. This is one of a number of equinox and solstices that have some highly unusual event happening on them. And another one, for example, is going to be the Cancer solstice. The southern solstice is going to be an eclipse on the southern solstice, just like there was in 2001. There was a similar eclipse to this happened just months before 9/11. And what makes this so powerful is that it's connected to the Aries point. This first degree of Aries is a very influential point in astrology. And it tends to serve as a magnifier and also a thing that sort of plunks us down at the intersection of the individual and the collective, and we just sort of all get dropped right into the middle of this intersection of the individual and the collective, and it's like we have no privacy at all, and they're talking about doing all kinds of incredibly invasive things, and P.S. I read this morning that in China they're installing cameras right in people's houses. It's fucking crazy. All right, so the combination of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, the triple Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, followed by the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, right? These planets are all kind of dancing around in the retrograde, and they're making a series of conjunctions to one another, and it all culminates when Saturn goes into Aquarius to stay for the next 2.5 years, followed by Jupiter for the next 1 year, and then the two biggest planets form a conjunction on 12/21/20. This begins the next major phase of our lives, and it's a kind of a mini Aquarian era. And we are being invited to wake the fuck up and to be conscious of what's going on around us and to actually make decisions and to do something that is very un-Aquarian and unfixed. Fixed being a great benefit of astrology, the 4 fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, and also a problem of fixity of being set in one's concepts and set in one's ways, and not even admitting that that's actually what's going on. It's often treated as being so enlightened. I'm so enlightened. I just completely dismiss that whole idea right out of hand. I have no idea really what it's about, but yeah, can't be true. Or that's conspiracy theory, or that person's from that viewpoint, or that person's from that viewpoint. And this is very dangerous thinking if you think you want to be an aware person. You need to be thinking each step consciously, not letting your little reptile brain in the back of your head do your thinking for you in fight or flight mode, or deciding in advance what you like and what you don't like, or who you like and who you don't like, but actually honestly assessing the situation that you are in and the situation that we are in, and looking at things at face value and then going beneath the surface of them. And so there's been this one shock to this fixed thought, fixed patterns process that we're now apparently coming out of. The news has shifted to, okay, bringing society back and turning the economy back on. Not a lot of thought about how we want to do this. I'm the only person that I have seen in almost every article talking about the relationship between coronavirus and global warming. I know a couple of writers here and there may have made this point, but it's a point that I've been making frequently and made fairly early on. Aquarius also has a lot to do with systems, and we need to be thinking about systems of all kinds, including internet systems, the immune system, social systems, and the way in which we tend to, in this Aquarian era, systemize everything. It's like nothing is custom made anymore, or it's allegedly custom made. Your whatever stream follows your supposed preferences. We need to be doing things a little more one cookie at a time, one step at a time. A couple of other really distinctive facts about this. When was this one? Oh, this is the chart for my chart for the Spanish flu pandemic. It's been a while since I was in front of the camera. Okay, so a couple of other bits. This year also features a Venus retrograde in Gemini. That's between May 13 and June 25, and a Mars retrograde in Aries, and that's between 9 and 11. Yeah, 11/13. So in the spring we have Venus retrograde. It's warming up now, and then in the autumn for the election we have Mars retrograde. There was also a Mars retrograde in the year that Trump was elected, and these interplanet retrogrades lead people to have to make reevaluations that they might not want to make. The retrograde can also come with a confrontation with the past in some way, can stir up past material, and there will be a reorientation of some kind in nearly all relationships, because the yin and yang factors are shuffling, because past factors will come into play in the relationship, and then therefore these things will themselves promulgate many changes. The Mars retrograde in particular contains several things of note. Thank you. One of which is that Mars is on 7/14 going to make a conjunction to Chiron. That's a big one. I think the whole Mars retrograde is going to be contained in that, July 14, and then a series of 3 conjunctions to Eris in Aries on August 17, October 4th, and then at the end of the year on 12/22, right as the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happens. So this is a very big transitional year. Now, I feel like a lot of what I do with astrology is guide people in the transition from one phase to the next. This is the biggest one that I've ever seen in terms of its before and after qualities. And now we're looking at this big interruption in the middle that no one's ever going to forget as long as they live. And I hope you take a lot of pictures of the world. The fully asleep or mostly asleep world is pretty much over at this point. And so take photos of the remnants of it so you remember what it was like to live through this whole scenario. All right, that is what I have to say to you. I am now going to proceed apace. I foresee doing readings that are about this long, and we will post them as they are completed to the internet. So I imagine that we'll start getting signs up on Wednesday the 29th, and I'm going to finish this as promptly and effectively as I can, and have a little Beltane holiday without a big project to do. So this is the first step in a journey of 1,000 miles. Thank you for being a Planet Waves customer. One last thought about why I'm calling these readings the Dharma readings. Dharma is the idea of acting as if to hold the world together. Right now, the world is falling apart, and we each need to act as if to hold the world together. In the individual sense of Dharma, this is the action that you take that's a little bit like holding the world like this, like that. Hold the world together. As if, remember, the concept of Dharma as translated out of Sanskrit is not you will save the world. The concept of Dharma is you act as if to do your small part to hold the world together. There's a really big difference between the two of them because it's not so much about being a hero. It's about doing your best, really doing your best, and living in a conscious way and having an ethic of holding the world together, right? This is the truest meaning of an ethic. And the truth is that we live in times of decay and breakdown, but Dharma is a living thing. Dharma is its own creature. It is a property of God that we can tune into. So it's a kind of a cosmic law of nature that we can tap into. And when we do, we not only help make the world a better place, we make our lives a better place, and those around us, as we embark on being fully committed to a loving and healing and supportive way of life. So in that spirit, thank you for signing up for this reading, and I'm going to do my best to break this down for all 12 signs and rising signs and explain from my perception the best I can from the experience I have doing this, how it is that you can connect with your calling, your Dharma.